What's up, everyone? Welcome to another Easy Equities webinar after hours, though. I would like to welcome you all to a Easy Equities webinar about tax-free investing. So we're going to fall in love with tax-free investing in just one webinar. And today I'm not alone. I finally have the man himself, the man at Easy Wealth, the man at Impra, the top 3 financial advisors in SA, I think in 2019. Mr. Craig Turton himself. Say hello to everyone, Craig.
How's it, guys? Great to see everyone. Thanks for the intro, Lesedi. Looking smart there, man.
Awesome. You know, the Drip King can never disappoint at Easy Equity. So thank you all for joining yet again. I know Craig has something special lined up for us, and he's going to make us fall in love with tax-free investing, and then we're going to jump straight into the questions that you guys have. So just before we get started, a few housekeeping rules. Remember, if you want to ask a question, ask it in the Q&A section, and my boy Sean will handle that, or we will answer it live here on this webinar. To everyone joining, shout out to you guys. Remember that you get a 50 Rand voucher just for attending this webinar. So we'll send that to you tomorrow. And again, the last rule is there's no stupid questions. Shoot, Craig's here, I'm here, and we are ready to answer your question. So yeah, without any further ado, Craig, could you take us away?
If I can just kick off and say that I'd actually really love to change the name of a tax-free savings account, and there's one word in there, which is savings, because for me, savings implies, from a financial point of view, is that it's more of a short-term, structure, and to switch that savings word with investment, so a tax-free investment account. And for me, investment means more long-term, maybe a little bit more structured. And we're going to talk around a little bit more of those structures, moving forward, as to why I think a tax-free savings account is more of an investment associated account rather than a savings account. Okay, so what is a tax-free savings account? So 2015, National Treasury were really kind to us as taxpayers. They did us a big favor, Lesedi, and they said that anything that you invest within a tax-free savings account is not going to be subject to tax. So it's tax-free. Let's take advantage, man. We all hate paying taxes. And any incentive that they provide us with, let's take advantage of it. And the way I like to think of a tax-free savings account is like the wrapping around a Christmas present. So anything inside that present or anything inside that box is going to be tax-free. My kids love Christmas presents, so that's something that we can use it for. But without that wrapping around the Christmas present, it's not going to be tax-free. So we can almost use that analogy with a tax-free savings account, that whatever's in that box is going to be tax-free, whether it's a unit trust or an ETF, whatever it could be. So without that wrapper, we're going to be taxed on those instruments. So that's essentially where a tax-free savings account, comes in. So all of these funds, so use your tax-free savings account to invest in, mentioned just now, ETFs, baskets, and bundles. And all of these are available, on the EasyEquities platform that you can invest in. And then Lesedi, on the screen here, we've got the 36,000 Rand and the 500,000 Rand over your lifetime in terms of contributions. And I'm going to touch on that a little bit later in the presentation, if that's okay, because I think we need to spend a little bit of time on that. So I'm going to move on to the next slide here. Okay, so here we've got diversified funds. So what can we invest in? So within a tax-free savings account, you can invest in various unit trusts, exchange traded funds, and bundles. And the one element here under the fund selection that is not really, it's not too often spoken about, is that we can only offer funds in a tax-free savings account that don't have performance fees linked to it. And I think that's one thing that Treasury probably got right, where, funds or unit trusts or ETFs, if they outperform their benchmark, they're allowed to charge what's called a performance fee. And that essentially for me just adds another layer of costs onto the platform. So anything within a tax-free savings account structure cannot have performance fees linked to it, which is a really, really, I think good incentive from National Treasury to have implemented. Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to the nitty-gritty. So National Treasury has put limits on the amount that you can invest in a tax-free savings account. So the first limit is our annual limit, which is, runs between, 1 March and the end of February every year. It's the fiscal year, the financial year that South Africa sticks to. And that is 36,000 Rand a year. And we can break that down as we like. Let's say we can contribute 3,000 Rand a month. So we can start a debit order and we can, contribute that 3 grand a month, for the next 12 months to get us to the 36,000 Rand. Or we could make, 2 payments of maybe one of 30 and one of 6, during the course of the year. So there's no real structure to that, but we are limited to that 36,000 Rand a year in contributions. They've also imposed a lifetime limit of 500,000 Rand over your lifetime. So obviously your contributions cannot exceed the 500,000 Rand. And I often get posed the question, well, what happens with the growth? Does that count? Do I need to stop contributing once my investment hits 500,000 Rand with the growth? And the answer there is no. So that 500,000 Rand is only based on contributions that have gone into the fund, into the investment. Then we chat about penalties. So here, if you exceed the annual and lifetime limits, there are penalties. So if you exceed your 36,000 Rand a year between different providers, then SARS is going to implement a penalty of 40% tax on those contributions that you've exceeded it by. And yeah, so obviously we don't want to do that. It's obviously in everyone's interest to make sure that you don't overreach those contributions, and it's quite lacquer on EasyEquities where we control that, and we'll notify you if we do see that you are going to over contribute on the 36,000 Rand for the year. So monitor those contributions, and remember those contributions are across all providers. So you could have a tax-free savings account with EasyEquities, and you could have another one with your bank, for example. And that 36,000 Rand applies to the combination of the two. So if you've contributed 6,000 Rand to the one, remember you can only then contribute 30 to the other one, and SARS obviously keeps track of that. In terms of withdrawals are not taken into account when your annual or lifetime limits are determined. So just an example of that, if you've contributed up until this point 300,000 Rand to your tax-free savings account, and in 1 year you decide to withdraw 100,000 Rand, you still only got 200,000 Rand left over your lifetime. So just because you've withdrawn, it doesn't mean now you can now contribute that extra 100,000 Rand back into the investment. So just be wary of that your withdrawals do count in both your annual limits and your lifetime limits, which is quite important to keep note of that. And then, I think on the withdrawals note, where we've seen quite a few clients come unstuck with that is, they will often use their funds or their cash within their tax-free savings account to fund some emergency or some short-term expenses that they've come across. An example of that was, a couple of months ago, we had a client who had to withdraw their money from their tax-free savings account for their wedding. They had to fund some of their wedding expenses. And our recommendation to that would probably to rather save outside of a tax-free savings account for those short-term goals than saving inside a tax-free savings. So the view around a tax-free savings is that it needs to be long-term. The tax benefit only kicks in, after a couple of years of investing and earning interest and dividends in it. So anything short-term related, we all should have an emergency account, that could cover probably 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. And that cash should not be in a tax-free savings account. That money should be in a easily accessible cash account that you can withdraw at any time, maybe earning your 3-4% interest on that. And then your tax-free savings is a separate investment vehicle that you're going to try and invest for as long as possible and not withdraw from it, essentially. Okay, so the tax benefits, just as we touched on now, like the name applies, so you don't pay any interest on the earnings within the investment. So that refers to, interest, dividends, withholding tax. And then also when you withdraw, often with these investments, you get any asset, that you withdraw from, you're going to get a capital gains tax, which is nice with a tax-free. You're not going to pay any capital gains tax when you do make a withdrawal. And from the research and the calculations that we've done, we've only really seen the tax benefits kick in after about 5 years. So that just goes back to my point from the last slide where, anything shorter than that period of time shouldn't be in a tax-free savings account. So structure your investment portfolio in silos and have that tax-free for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, if you can at all possible. There's lots of flexibility with the tax-free, so you're not actually tied in at any point in time. So you can access the money at any time, understanding, those withdrawals, sort of penalties that you are going to make on it. And yeah, you can contribute lump sums or regular investments on a monthly basis if you'd like to. And as with EasyEquities, with lots of other items on our platform, you've got variety. So we've got 68 different approved ETFs. So again, it has to be approved in terms of the guidelines from Treasury. So we have over 68 different ETFs that you can invest in. And we've also got a variety of different bundles to suit your investment appetite on that side. So Lesedi, if we can maybe just talk around, that variety a little bit, and how to choose those bundles or those ETFs. And, a lot of it goes around your risk profile, so, how much risk are you willing to take? What is your investment personality like? Are you reluctant, to take risks? You don't like to see your investment going up and down. Maybe you prefer cash because it's almost like a guaranteed or conservative return. But for us, just thinking back to the last couple of slides, understanding that a tax-free savings account is more of a longer-term investment strategy, we would prefer you to be geared in something that is going to give you, growth in the long term. And, those assets that are going to give you growth in the long term, are predominantly shares, maybe a bit of property, associated with that. And a big attraction lately has been some offshore funds, some offshore ETFs, some offshore unit trusts. So gear your tax-free savings account for long term. I've seen a lot of clients who have had their tax-free investments in cash, which, because they've taken it out with the various banks, whatever it is, and they've only had money market funds, linked to it. And I'd encourage some clients just to rethink that potentially and to rather focus on something which is going to give you, a higher return, than cash and inflation over the longer term.
Okay, Craig, if you don't mind me jumping in quickly.
Sure,
you touched on a point saying knowing your risk, basically. And a lot of people, I know myself when I started investing, I don't know, when people said your risk appetite, I didn't necessarily know what it meant. And I didn't know the different risk categories. And one thing I found out with EasyEquities is that you can always check out your risk appetite if you go onto our website or type in risk analyzer .EasyEquities. You'll find it there, which is super simple. You fill out a few questions and you get your appetite. So Craig, from what you've seen in this world, and I know you've dealt with a lot of clients with your background being financial planning, would you say it's better for a millennial like myself to be more risk adverse or more riskier?
Good question, Lesedi. I love it, man. I love it. So yeah, 100%. So Riskalyze, a great tool on the Easy Equity platform where you can go on and answer a series of questions, and it gives you a number from 1 to 100. 1 being super conservative and 100 being, you love risk, and you love volatility. So it's going to give you a score within that. So for example, if I can use mine as an example, my risk score came out as 72, which is probably on the high side. So, I'm quite happy to take a bit of risk in my portfolio, but there is an element of conservatism, let's say it, in my strategy. But that is just one element in deciding how you should invest in your tax-free savings account or any other investment. You need to look at the goal of the investment, and you look at how long you're going to be investing for. So a tax-free savings account, if you believe and understand and like what I'm saying, that it's more of a long-term investment, then you kind of want to look at your risk score and say, okay, well, I'm a 72, but if I'm investing in this thing for the next 10 years, I could probably push that up into a portfolio that's maybe closer to 90. So if on the other end of the scale, somebody was a 30, having done the Riskalyze assessment, and they're 25 years old and they're investing in a tax-free savings account, their Riskalyze assessment would say they should be in cash or something conservative. But the nature of the investment, and if they want to invest for the next 10, 20 years, then they should rather select something which is more equity-based, which is more volatile, which is a little bit riskier, and almost just close your eyes and ignore the volatility, assess it every year, have a look at what it's doing, but, just sacrifice that short-term volatility, knowing that over the longer term, that kind of fund is going to give you, better returns. Is that on your question, Lesedi?
Yeah, definitely. So basically, you touched on what is a tax-free savings account, and you said it is exactly what it sounds like, just that you would remove the savings word out of it because it is an investment tool, and you should look at investing for the long horizon and anything above 5 years. And you did mention that your mullah and your interest is not what do you call this, taxed, which is awesome. So Craig, you mentioned a variety of things I can invest into my ETF, and you say my TFSA, and you mentioned ETFs. I am a bit confused when you say ETFs. What is that? What does it do? Is it found on the EasyEquities platform? Yeah, my mind is blown right now.
Okay, cool, man. Perfect. So the easiest way to explain it is sort of going back to that Christmas present analogy, where we had the wrapper that's going around the Christmas present. So the tax-free savings account is the vehicle, or it's the wrapping that goes around it. Okay, so that is giving you the tax-free benefit of investing. And then it's up to you as the investor to choose what you're going to put into that present, or what you choose, you're going to put into that box. So you can put unit trusts in that box, you can put ETFs, and you can put bundles, in that box. So you can put anything in there that is regulated, by Treasury, that is allowed inside a tax-free savings account. So a unit trust is basically a collective of different instruments that a manager has decided to invest in that unit trust. So within that unit trust, you could have shares, you could have bonds, you could have property, you could have cash, and you could have some of it offshore. And then an ETF is an exchange traded fund. So it's a low cost structured investment. And inside that ETF, you will also find, shares, properties, depending on how the manager of that ETF has designed that structure. So for example, on our platform, you've got the Satrix Top 40 ETF, which means that Satrix has decided that they're going to invest in the 40 biggest shares, 40 biggest companies on the JSE, and they're going to stick to that philosophy. So if you invest in that ETF, you're basically investing in the 40 biggest companies on the Joburg Stock Exchange. Okay. And then there's another ETF that Satrix offers, which is called the S&P 500, and that invests in the S&P is a stock exchange in America, and there you're investing in the 500 biggest stocks on the American stock market. So those are essentially the differentiators. And then just to take that a step further, that we then have bundles on the platform, and then there's different managers like Emperor Asset Management, who have very similar to an ETF. They've just got a bundle which is structured of shares and ETFs within that bundle, and then Emperor decides how they manage that bundle on an ongoing and on an active basis.
Awesome. Okay, that answers my question. So essentially, an ETF does track a theme, and it's more like when you go to the shops and you go down the tools aisle and you pick a bunch of tools and you put it in a plastic bag, and that's basically your basket of shares, if I'm understanding you correctly.
Spot on, man. Spot on.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Got it. Okay, then. Sorry, Craig. Let me let you get back to your presentation and not hold you back anymore.
No, please keep firing the questions. It's lekker. It's great. Yeah. Okay, so we've touched on everything on the slide. Just checking out, any profits made on the investment do not form part of the investor's annual or lifetime minutes, which is important. So that profit would mean, if there's any interest or if there's any, dividends that have grown, it doesn't affect the 36 or the 500,000 rand those essentially those limits. So this is a cool slide. This says that you put together. I think this goes January, if I'm not mistaken, 1st of January to the end of January. So this shows us the most bought ETFs, and coming out number one is the Signia Fourth Industrial Global Equity Fund. Number two is the Satrix MSCI World, the Satrix Nasdaq, the Satrix China, and then the Satrix Top 40, which we just touched on now. So on this screen, Lesedi, I just wanted to talk about your options and a little bit of diversity. So how do we choose and how do we diversify our portfolio, and what should we be investing in, and what type of ETF should we be investing in inside our tax-free savings account? And often what I would do with the client is have a look at your whole portfolio. So have a look at your company pension fund, your provident fund. Look at where your company that you're working in makes their money. Look at where, if you own a property, you're exposed to the South African property market. Look at your share portfolio. So what kind of shares have you invested in, and all of that just starts telling a little bit of a story in terms of where you have the most exposure and where you need more exposure. So where do you have too little invested and where do you have too much invested? And generally we find with most South Africans, it's, you've invested in predominantly South African assets, like your property, your salary comes from a South African company. Your pension fund is probably 60-70% exposed to South African assets. So, think about that and think about your own portfolio and what exposure you have to the South African market, and then think to yourself, okay, well, how can I distribute that a bit offshore and gain access to other markets? So other American markets, European markets, other currencies, for example. And that's where your tax-free savings account can play like a really great role, because you can invest in offshore ETFs and offshore bundles within your tax-free savings account, which is going to give you, that exposure to, different markets, and you're not just reliant on what we're doing here in South Africa. So an example of that, we've touched on it a bit, is the S&P 500, which is an American-based fund. You've got the Satrix MSCI World, which is, like a global fund. Then we've also got an Emperor bundle, an international bundle, which is, they've also got local, bundles, by the way. but that international one has some really great international ETFs and shares within it, which would give you that international or that foreign exposure, which I think we all need in our portfolios. This isn't advice. It is. It's just getting us to think about how our portfolio is looking and maybe where we long on certain things and we short on certain things, and to make sound investment decision when it comes to selecting the funds within my tax-free savings account. Don't just go and choose something that your friend spoke about at a bra or at a gathering, whatever it is. Look at your own portfolio and understand where your strengths and weaknesses are and invest in those assets within your tax-free savings account. So yeah, that's just to touch on a little bit around how to diversify. And here's another great one, Lesedi. So we've got a portal which was built by our two legends at EasyEquities, Sean Keeling and Tristan Finnemore, and this gives a great comparison between the different ETFs that you can invest in. You can see there the one is the One Invest Gold. It's One Invest Global Government Bond Fund, and on this platform you can compare different ETF managers between asset classes, the region, the risk profile that we've just spoken about already, the fund strategy, the costs that are associated with it, the size of the fund. Maybe you don't like funds that have just launched. They might have some small assets within it. You prefer to have something that's been around for a little bit longer, got more assets on the books. So the platform just allows you to compare those different ETFs, and the site is etfs.easyequities.co.za. Go and visit it. It's a great site, and we're going to be launching unit trusts onto that platform quite shortly as well. So look out for that. So yeah, that's it on that slide. And Lesedi, that's me, man. Yeah, questions, discussions, please fire away.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Craig. A wealth of knowledge there, and this is why you are the head of wealth at Easy. Shout out to you for joining us today. Anyone that's joined us late, this will be up on our YouTube channel, so you can check it out later on. And just to catch up what Craig said, we will be sending you guys the presentation for those of you who registered for this webinar. And if you don't, please hit up our support channel, and they will hit me up and let me know that I should send it to you. So we will get straight into the questions. There is a bunch of questions. I think there's over 100 questions here. And just to get us started, while I find a perfect question for you, Craig, what is your top performing ETF in your tax-free savings account?
I have to go and check that out, Lesedi. It's a great question. I could be corrected, but I think it is my S&P 500 ETF.
Awesome. Okay, I've got the perfect question for you, and it comes from Sue. So Sue has two daughters, 16 and 14. How do I open a tax-free savings account, and will they be registered with SARS as taxpayers?
Cool, good question, Sue. How's it? Yeah, so the best way to open it is to go into the EasyEquities platform and follow what we call the minor application process. They're under 18 years old, so register them, open up accounts in their own names, which is really cool. I mean, I do that with my son. He's 9 years old. I've got a little account for him. And I just get him to go and check out some shares and things like that. But it's ideal for kids to and even more so teenagers to understand the markets and the ETFs and look out and understand investing. And at this stage, to open a minor account, we don't need a tax number, so we can get around that because they're minors. And down the line, once they start earning an income, then they would need to apply for a tax number. So to open a minor account, we don't need the tax number, but it will become required, when they do start earning something.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Craig. And another question we have here is, can people transfer their tax-free savings account from, say, the bank to EasyEquities?
Yes, great question. So it's a great question, and I think there's quite a bit of misunderstanding around this. So we've had a few people that have sent us queries and said, I've just disinvested from my tax-free savings account and now I want to invest in a tax-free savings account with EasyEquities. And I'm like, oh no, now that is seen as a withdrawal. So you've taken your money out of your tax-free savings account to invest back into a tax-free savings account, which is a no-no. So what you do want to do if you want to transfer from your bank to EasyEquities is just contact our transfers team. And what happens is it takes your current tax-free savings and it just merely transfers it and moves it into a new tax-free savings account with us. So don't withdraw it. Make sure that you action a transfer from your bank into the EasyEquity tax-free savings account. Good question.
Awesome. And we have another question here from Anonymous. And the question is, when does one start investing?
Sure. That's a tough question. I think probably the best answer is as soon as you start earning. So as soon as you get your first paycheck, you should be putting a percentage of that paycheck away and getting used to not seeing that money and not spending that money. So work on a percentage, say 5%, 10% of whatever you're getting into your bank account, run a debit order off your account, get it invested into something else, into a tax-free savings account, and just forget about it. And just learn to live on what money you've got left over after investing and after saving. Because I think that's where a lot of us come unstuck, is that we spend before we save and before we invest. Which should be the other way around. Ayla said it should be invest and save, and invest what's left over at the end.
True. So here comes the next question, and a lot of people have battled with this. And sometimes people reach their tax-free limits and their lifetime limits, and they don't know where to go from there. What would you say to them?
So I think if I understand the question right, just make sure you don't go over those limits. I mean, those limits are quite high. So don't be put off by the limits. If you can put 100 Rand away, every month, then do it. You don't have to get to that limit in a tax-free savings account. If you've got 100 Rand spare that you can invest, start there. Choose a good ETF, choose a good bundle, and invest from there, and then just plan to increase that, as you go, and use a company like EasyEquities to track what your contributions have been over your lifetime.
Okay, awesome. The next question comes from Mfolo, and she wants to know, how long does one need to hold an ETF for, since it's a long-term investment?
Yeah, so you get different ETFs, with different risk, scores associated with them. So an ETF that has a risk score of 30, for example, you probably want to hold on to that for 3 years, whereas an ETF that is pure equity, pure shares, you want to hold on to that for 7 years plus. But any of those in your tax-free savings account, more than 5 years to really start seeing the benefit from it, Ayla says.
Yeah, definitely. Be in it for the long haul.
For the long haul. Exactly.
Yeah. And let's see, what's the next question over here? So the next question is, can I withdraw the 36,000 at the end of the tax year and continue with the monthly contributions?
Yeah, so also a good question. So if you withdraw that 36,000 Rand, just remember you can't put it back, for that tax year. And then that is seen as a withdrawal against your lifetime limit. So So your lifetime limit isn't then going to increase by 36,000 Rand to 536,000 Rand. And again, that goes to, I think my point around, you really do not want to withdraw from a tax-free savings account if you want to see the real benefit from a tax point of view in the long term. But you can withdraw at any time, but whatever you take out, you can't put back in.
Okay, so I hope you heard that, guys. Whatever you take out, you can't put back in. And the next question is, what would you recommend for someone that is not a millennial and is over the age of 60, but has a risk appetite that's very aggressive? Would you say, and this is not advice, guys, please, if you're looking for advice, go to your financial advisor and they will help you out. This is just Craig's opinion. So Craig, would you say they can look at aggressive funds and be more equity and rather than cash and stuff like that? What would you say to them?
Sure. So older than 60, aggressive risk appetite. I wouldn't be worried about it. I wouldn't be worried if a 60-year-old was keen to invest in pure shares or 100% in offshore markets, for example. But I think a lot has to do with again, what the intention is of that money. So if that money is required to provide them with an income in the next sort of 3 years or 5 years, then I'd be hesitant to put it into something which is going to be hugely volatile. So whereas if that sort of lump sum of money needs to give the investor some income in the shorter term, then rather keep it in something which is more conservative. So again, earlier we spoke about it's a combination of things. So it's a combination of your risk appetite, but you need to include the goal and the duration of the investment into that equation at the same time. So it's not a one size fits all, if that makes sense. But if I'm 60 years old and I've got a high risk appetite, I definitely wouldn't be worried about it. I'd embrace it, but just make wise investment decisions on what that money is there for.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for that answer, Craig. And the next question is, let's say I invest in an ETF in my tax-free savings account and I disinvest out of my ETF. Does that count as a withdrawal from my tax-free savings account?
Good question. So as long as you keep it in the wrapper, so as long as you keep it in your tax-free wrapper or wallet, you don't like that specific ETF, maybe you don't like the returns, maybe you don't like the, where it's invested and how it's invested, maybe you don't like the manager, you can withdraw it, but keep it in your tax-free savings wallet, and then, choose another fund that you could go into, another manager or another offshore fund or another local fund, whatever it could be, but just don't take it out of your EasyEquities, we talk about wallets. So just don't take it out of your tax-free savings wallet, but you can make different investment decisions within that wallet.
Awesome. Craig, we've got a lot of parents on this call, and I see repetitive questions there, but the main question and the most frequently asked question is, can I invest into a tax-free savings account for my children? And does EasyEquities allow for minor accounts?
Cool. Great question again, Lesedi. Definitely we allow for minor accounts and tax-free savings accounts for minors, and I'd encourage it. The thing to remember with a minor and a tax-free savings account is that a minor at the moment doesn't pay tax. So if your child is 10 years old and they're only going to start earning an income, when they're 24 years old, from 10 years old till they're 24, you've exceeded their lifetime contributions. You've reached the 500,000 Rand lifetime, contribution. So you've removed their ability to invest in their own tax-free savings account when they pay taxes with you having invested for them at that point in time when they were younger. So just keep that in mind as a parent when you are opening up a tax-free savings account is that the tax benefit is really, really small, for a minor, because they're not earning an income. And you are removing that benefit from them when they do start paying taxes, when they start working. So it's a balance between investing for them now when they're younger versus them getting the tax benefit when they are actually working. But any investment for your kids is a wonderful and a beautiful thing. And how lucky is that? I mean, they're going to appreciate it so much, whether it's a tax-free savings account or a share portfolio, whatever it is. It's just amazing. And yes, EasyEquities opens minor accounts, and it's a very simple, easy process.
Okay, I see we're about to reach the end of this webinar. I'm going to ask you the last question, Craig, and this is always a fan favorite. Would you choose a tax-free savings account or an RA?
Hey, Lesedi, yo, we get lots of conversations about this, eh? So my general go-to for me personally is that I prefer to max out my retirement contributions from a tax point of view. So the big difference between a tax-free and an RA is that you get the tax deduction on your contributions into retirement annuity. Once it's in the retirement annuity or in the tax-free, it's a very similar structure in that it grows tax-free, but the RA comes with a bigger benefit in terms of the contributions. But the RA also comes with its restrictions, where it's tied in until you're 55. When you retire, you can only access 1/3, et cetera, et cetera. So I like to say that they don't compete against each other. It's not one or the other. They say they're partners. They're both equally good, and a combination of both in your portfolio is probably the right way to go. One is not better than the other. They work in conjunction with each other. The biggest thing is, for me, is just making sure that it's invested correctly, whether it's in an RA or whether it's in a tax-free savings account. For me, that's more of the question that I'd be asking myself than comparing the two.
Awesome. And thank you so much for that last answer, Craig. Guys, that's all we have time for, unfortunately. And if you have any further questions, please go to support.easyequities.co.za. If you have any queries about your account, or if you have any questions for Craig or myself, we are always happy to answer. Remember, the recording will be up on YouTube. So for those who are going to watch it on YouTube, shout out for watching this. And for those of you who joined us, thank you so much. And thank you to you too, Craig, for joining us this evening. Yeah. And the last thing before Sean kills me is, when you guys want to make a choice on what ETFs to decide on, please check out EasyETFs. That's a great site to compare ETFs as well as pick them. So yeah, any last words from you, Craig?
Yeah, Lesedi, if I think there's one more slide I think that we need to share. I think, was there a competition that you wanted to announce?
Awesome, yeah. Before I forget, for those of you guys who've left, sorry about that. The competition that we have now is about your tax-free savings account. Like Craig mentioned, you have a lifetime limit, annual limit of 36,000 Rand. So what we're going to do as Easy ETFs is that we're going to help you reach that limit for you. And as you can see, if you've deposited at least more than 100 Rand or 100 Rand, you are entered into our draw for us to top up your tax-free account for you for this financial year. So, and this competition ends on the 24th of February, 2021. So guys, watch out on our socials, and we will be sending more information on this competition later. Thanks a lot for joining us, guys. Happy investing.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me, everyone. Appreciate it.
Just cheers. Bye.
Cheers.